Hello and welcome back to the Security Metrics podcast. I'm Jen Stone. I'm a principal security analyst here at SecurityMetrics. Very excited for this last episode of season 1. If you're listening to us on the podcast or if you're YouTube, wherever you are, if you haven't left us a review yet, please do that. I'm really hoping that they're going to let me do this for another season. So if you say something nice, they probably will. Let's see how that goes. But today I have with me, so excited, CEO and founder, and I don't even know what to call you, Brad Caldwell. Started up SecurityMetrics. You want to tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about SecurityMetrics?
Sure. I had a business. I was a small business owner, and we had a website, and we were selling a product that was a Linux-based product. And we were charging educational price. And in the early days of Linux, there were a lot of purists, and they thought, how could you dare charge for a Linux product? They all should be free. And so they came in and they hacked our website.
Oh.
And so I thought, oh my gosh, how does this work? So I went and talked to our developers, and they said, I have no idea how they got in. And so I checked around, and IBM wanted $80,000 to do a one-time assessment, but I couldn't afford $80,000 in my small business, so I just got hacked again.
Oh, no.
And that's when I thought, oh, you know what? Small businesses have so much to deal with. They shouldn't have to deal with this too. And so I started SecurityMetrics, and we have very affordable pricing on our product. So you can do your scans, and hopefully within $100 or $200, you can do a scan every quarter, make sure your site is secure. And that was the whole genesis, is trying to help small businesses not be attacked. And especially in this day and age where your data is maybe ransomwared and it's going to be posted, and you could be ruined as a business.
Right.
It's more and more important for businesses. So I'm excited that we're in the space. We're able to help hundreds of thousands of businesses.
Oh, that's awesome. So, awful that you had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
But if you were to go back and talk to yourself at that time, what do you wish you had known about security that you just didn't know then?
Well, I think the biggest thing was I'd always historically gone back to my developers. They were always the smart guys. So I'd go to the smart guys and I'd say, how did they do this? And this was the first time I went to my developers, and they said, we have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know how they did it. And I said, well, that doesn't help. I mean, how do we fix this? And there was no fix. And so we went and we patched the server, and we reinstalled the server, and we did all those things, but then the vulnerability was still there. There wasn't a vulnerability scanner in those days, right? This is in the 90s.
Right.
And so I didn't have any blueprint. There was nothing for me to test, and we got hacked again. I was fortunate in that we kept all of our card data off of that web server, and so they weren't getting in anything except they were just taking down the server. They were
So it's a
deleting
little bit
files.
of hacktivism because they
Yeah,
didn't like
that's
how
what it
you were
was.
going about your business.
That's what it was. We were charging an educational price, and they thought that was a bad idea, so they came in and wreaked havoc on our site. But it didn't feel good, right? I mean,
No,
literally,
for sure.
I literally went through the 5 stages of grief, right? We talk about that, but I mean, it was real. I was like, somebody's not really doing this
Yeah.
to me. And then I realized they were, and I didn't know where in the world they were. I didn't know anything about it, but it felt really bad. And so we were able to, get the site eventually secure, and we didn't have that problem. But it was just a real wake-up call that people are actually, they're bored.
Yeah.
And they have time.
Yeah.
To be a hacktivist and to come in and do damage to your
That's
system.
rough. You weren't just a drive-by malware. It was actually, you were targeted.
Yeah, no, they came into the site and they deleted files and took the site down.
That's rough.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you said back in the 90s, you and I, have been working since at least the 90s. I think we're about the same age, but
Let's not talk about
look,
that.
for anyone who is actually listening and not on YouTube, I carry it better.
Okay,
Just-
no, you do.
Okay,
No, you
well,
look
so
much
that's
better.
weird.
Yeah. No.
But thinking about the current threat landscape compared to back in the 90s, how do you think things have changed?
Well, the sophistication of the systems are so much more complex. Security is so much harder today. In those older days, your configuration was much less of a problem. And so there was a lot less to check back then. Now you have to check so much, and there's so many different places you can be holding your data. There's CDNs, there's all of these things. I mean, it's just so complicated that I think it's just kind of running away. And we all want to know instant data all the time, which means all of these systems are coming and connecting into our websites, into our systems that we never even thought of in the past. So the complexity's really gone up, and I think security is getting harder and harder over time, not easier. So it is interesting to see that change in that dynamic. Initially, when I started, I thought, well, eventually computers will self-heal, right? They'll self-secure. And we found the opposite is true. It's actually getting harder, not easier.
Right. Well, because systems are more complex, and there's a lot more of them, a lot more applications, a lot more surface area, and there's a lot more people out there trying to poke holes in it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So finding those vulnerabilities where, and I believe it's only going to get worse. So I think you're talking about automation of not just security controls, but also, like you were talking about, vulnerability scans and things that.
Yes.
So knowing about your system. So.
Right.
But before we get to kind of that topic, let's first talk about breaches. We actually have a forensics group. Or forensic, sorry. Forensics is the thing that the study or whatever, and forensic group. But I got yelled at for saying that wrong.
Not yelled at.
Oh.
Just reminded.
What I mean is, nobody would yell at me.
No.
I mean, usually
especially those guys.
Look,
The
if I
forensics guys are
started
all
it,
really nice.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't start anything.
Yeah.
But let's talk about breaches. So you, as part of this, having a forensic group and being part of that, you've actually helped investigate data breaches.
Yes. In fact, I did the first 9 forensic cases that we did as a company. And so Dave Ellis, who's been here for a long time.
He has. And he's been on this show too.
Yeah, no, and he's
Dave
great.
is great.
He is,
yeah.
he's great. And he, so I went out with Dave and we trained together and got him going, and then he's added people to the staff, and it's worked out really good. And because he was a policeman, he speaks the right language.
Right.
So when he talks to the government officials, they kind of know that he's a policeman and he's one of them. And I never got that luxury yet. They always kind of looked at me like, whatever.
Yeah, he's got the vibe.
He does.
You don't have that vibe.
I know. I don't. Yeah. So he does a much better job than I did. But it's fun. It's fun to kind of see that and see how forensics has evolved, and to see how it does shift. When we originally had before EMV, before the chips were out, everything was retail based pretty much.
Right.
We had some e-commerce, but not that much. Now the lion's share has shifted as we went to EMV. So we knew it was coming. We could look at the graphs from in Europe when that happened, and it's pretty much followed suit. The same things have happened.
Oh, interesting. So you have the advantage of having conducted investigations, and at the same time, now you're an executive. So you can kind of bridge that gap. As an executive, what advice would you give other executives on dealing with a breach?
Well, I think the first thing that happens typically in a breach is emotion. It's the 5 stages of grief again, right? And so once you've gone through that a couple times, you kind of see that. I think you just have to realize this, the sky's not falling, and that if you get a good group in, they're going to help you, they're going to represent you well, they're going to help you fix the problems right away and get you to a place where you're going to be in a good state. For quite some time, and so that's really what we're trying to get people to understand. So I think getting rid of the emotion and then being methodical. There's the reality is there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done in advance, like notifications.
Right.
And so you can't really wait and then find out that you need to notify, because the time frames can be fairly short in some of these states, because it's state by state. It's not a federal mandate.
Sure.
So I think that's the thing, is you've got to do some legwork up front, and if you're prepared, you're going to be in good shape. If you're not prepared, I think it's going to be a little bit of a whirlwind,
right? Because
there's some legal issues that get serious pretty quickly, depending on the type of breach you had.
So what I'm getting from you is that plan for a breach, even if you believe you are not going to have a breach, because your security is plan for a breach, and what are you going to do if it happens?
Yeah, I mean, we just have to assume that there's going to be a vulnerability somewhere that's going to bite you. And so being prepared, having a plan. I think one of the biggest problems with people and their plans is they don't have anyone who's responsible ultimately to determine that a breach has happened and the process starts.
Sure.
So if you don't have someone designated to do that and you don't have the criteria, then you may not state that a breach happened. You may not kick into your plan. But you really need to have a plan, and if you don't, you're just it's going to be ugly.
Right.
And once you have the plan, you have to make sure that it goes through, and then you need to test the plan. I think that's the biggest thing. Everyone finds all of the problems when they test it. So
Right.
if you test it, we have our auditing staff will go out, and they've done that for lots of organizations where we go out and just sit down. They go through a mock breach, and then we give them a write-up and say, these are the things that we witnessed that you may have been able to do better. And that's where I think everyone gets so much faster and better, and it becomes less emotional because you've done it a few times.
Right.
And then it's just a business process that you go through like any other business process.
Right.
And you can get through it.
Because if you're trying to figure something out that's new, like how do we respond to a breach, while emotions are elevated because of the breach, then that's the worst decision making. That is the worst creative thought process. And have we crossed all of our T's and dotted our I's? I don't know. My hair's on fire. So what do you see, though, as the single biggest high-level contributor to a data breach? What causes them?
I think it's almost always lack of testing. In the software world, it doesn't work unless you've tested it. You can't assume it works. You have to assume it doesn't work. And I think that's what happens. It's always a problem where somebody wasn't thorough enough. There was a human error. We didn't test that one server, right? We didn't really think it was in scope. We didn't think it really mattered. It was just this kind of a server. It doesn't matter. But it's still on our network. It's still trusted. It still had an open port through the firewall. Those are the things that if you really sit and look at it. So I think that's the biggest thing is it's just hard to always be perfect in all the IT group is always going to be perfect. And I think that's the mistake that everyone makes is they just think, well, it won't happen. We've got really good guys.
Right.
You have to be testing. You have to be reviewing. You have to have pen tests. A pen test is really just somebody coming in, looking over your shoulder and testing it objectively. And they almost always find issues, right? And so, again, you get businesses that don't want to spend the money. They think it's not going to happen to them. The odds are so low, but the reality is the odds are high. So those are the types of things I think that people need to be aware of.
I really like the thought that testing is what really gets us there, because you can sit and have a thought exercise all you want, but the more intensively that test happens, the more the realities come up. And also, one of the things that I see a lot is that people think it's the IT group, it's the developers that make the security, or it is the sysadmins that make sure security's there, or they might even have a security group, or they might have a compliance group. Like somebody will take care of this, and so especially for some of the assessments that I do, which are against certain standards or things, and they'll just hand it to them to deal with, but the business side doesn't get involved. And so I think a lot of that testing that you're talking about are the right people in the room for a response. Well, there's only so far that the operations team can go before they go, this is the decision we can't make. This is beyond us.
Right.
We can't communicate to the outside. We can't, when do we bring in our lawyers? We don't know. And so understanding that it's not just IT, but it's also the business side.
Yes.
I think that comes out in testing.
Yeah, and it really does, and it's really an important point. We have a security council because everyone, to your point, it's the developers' responsibility, it's the IT responsibility. We have a security council, and we have smart people in the room, like the forensics group, even though they're not necessarily the group that we're as concerned about, but we also have the pen test group. We have all of these different groups coming together, and then we all go through it and talk about it together, and it's all of our responsibility, and the council makes the decisions. And I think that's a real big deal, because once you start to understand that these other groups can get, marketing can push the wrong things out. Once you get all of the company together to understand it, they really understand the threat more, and then they're more they're less susceptible to fall for those things. And I had an example that I giggle about every once in a while, but one day I was walking by the receptionist, I'm not going to tell you who, and she was answering these questions. Brad Caldwell, CEO, Blake Stevens, and I'm like, so I just sat and listened, and at the end she had gone through company officers and given them their name and their titles and all of this stuff, and I finally said, so who was that? She goes, I get these all the time. And I go, what? What do you mean you get these all the time? And I never tested it. I never asked her that question. I never thought that was a problem.
Sure.
And that's the kind of things that pop up. How could I even assume that was going to be something that was happening? People were calling and getting social engineering data, and she had no idea. She thought it was her responsibility to provide the data because somebody asked, and she wanted to provide good customer service.
Right.
So I had to have a conversation, and then we could go through. But you won't make that mistake again. And that's how it is with these, going and testing. You'll test, and you'll all of a sudden find something, and then no one will make that mistake again.
Right.
And there's so many points of entry. There's so many vectors that it's really hard to wrap your arms around all of them.
Right.
But you really have to try hard, and you have to be diligent, or it's never going to happen, and you're going to be in trouble.
Right. And it all it takes is so it got cold here this week here in Utah, like really cold all of a sudden, and our chickens are fine. Just in case anybody was worried about them, we have they're warm and they're snug, and we had they've got the water. It's not frozen, any of that, because we had taken care of that for them. Right. The rabbit cage, not so much. And all of a sudden we have 2 more rabbits. So now I have 3 rabbits, right? And this cold snap hits, and I'm like, we can't leave them out there. They are not prepared for this weather, and we didn't give them the right. So we have rabbits in our living room. Yeah, I'm that kind of house. And
do rabbits smell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just thought I'd find out about that.
They do. They're not as bad as chickens, but really, I mean, the only thing worse than chickens is maybe ducks.
I'm glad you don't have chickens in your living room.
No, that would be bad.
Yeah,
but
that would be
but I
bad.
do. I have three rabbits in my living room, which wouldn't be bad. But I also have a Husky German Shepherd mix that my daughter has in my living room.
Oh.
And so she sits outside of their cages and stares at them and waits. And every once in a while, she will lick her chops. And I thought, this is just like cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Right? I can do everything right 16 days in a row, and on that 17th day, if I forget to latch this latch, that dog is going to eat those rabbits.
Yeah.
Right? And and that has been your farm bit for the minute.
Yeah.
But that's like data breaches, right?
Yeah.
You can do everything right for months. You can do everything right for years. And then you have one little weakness in your systems.
No, you're right.
And suddenly you have dead rabbits in your living room.
Yeah.
And I think this idea that it's not going to happen to them maybe is because they've had 16 days of security.
Yeah.
And people get complacent. But there's a lot to lose with a data breach.
Yeah.
Right? There is a lot to lose. So why do you think with the potential, so there's laws that can be broken, there is standards, there's fines and fees, there's different impacts, but also the financial impacts to your business from losing specific types of information. Anyway, I'm preaching to the choir here. They're real world impacts to a business, and yet I still see there are C-levels who are not engaged in the concept of security for their companies. Why?
But they think that's not going to happen to them. They're convinced. It's like I remember the early days when DOS was out and viruses came out, and everyone said it's not going to happen to them, and then nobody bought antivirus. And then as soon as it happened to you, guess what? That's when you said, oh, it can happen to me, and you went and you spent the money, and you get the same mentality. It's the exact same thing. Oh, I've got these super complicated systems, and I've got all of these servers everywhere, and but I'm going to be secure. I'm sure I'm going to be secure. I'm sure my configuration is 100%, and that there's never going to be any problem, and there's never going to be a patch that has a problem. And it's just, as soon as it happens, they hit themselves on the head and go, how could I have thought that, right?
Right.
But it's because it doesn't happen. And I remember going through that as well, where I didn't buy antivirus because it cost money, and I was younger, and I didn't feel like I have the money.
Right.
And as soon as it happened, I went and bought it and put it on my laptop because I didn't want that to happen again.
And that concept of it's about the money, right? As a C-levels, they have to make decisions.
Yeah.
Where am I going to put this budget? It's not an unlimited amount of money,
Yeah.
right? So how do you help other C-levels around you or people who talk to you? How do you help them justify the expense of security?
Well, I think, the best thing to do, because I did the first 9 forensics cases, I experienced that. I experienced the guy going, why did my acquirer not tell me about this?
Yeah.
And I had to say, I don't know, you have to ask them. But I knew the answer. It's when you go through that and when we see it, and I remember a year ago we had a lady, a small business in Salt Lake, and she came through some friends of ours. And, I sat on the phone while she cried.
Yeah.
She never got her data back. The FBI told her not to pay the ransom, which I understand.
Yeah.
We verified that the hacker could decrypt it, but she didn't want to do that, and so all of her data, all of her accounting data since she started the business was lost. I mean, we actually see those happen over and over again. So for us, it's really obvious that you should be doing it.
You should be doing these
But
things.
for somebody who's never seen it, it's just like when I fell in that same trap. I don't want to justify the expense. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's really not a wise strategy, but I understand why it happens.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm one of your auditors. I don't know if you knew that. Just
I
kidding.
did know that. I did know that.
Of course you knew that. And so I do a lot of work as a cybersecurity analyst with customers. Like you said, the people who have either dealt with a breach or who are need to meet PCI DSS or HIPAA or one of these various things. And one of the things that I see a lot when I go in to try and evaluate what's going on and give them a good report, and so give them something that they can take and use. I see them hand off. I see leadership hand off the responsibility for cybersecurity to people in other departments. And I think that there might be a balance there. I think that there might be a, hey, let's designate this. But a lot of times it's almost a disengagement from it. How can how can I help them be more engaged?
Well, and that's tough, right? Because again, you get the filter of it's not going to happen to me, and this is just a nuisance. I mean, we tend to see that a lot. You know that as you go through the audits. Can't you just not make us do that secure thing?
Nope, can't not do that.
But I mean, that's the kind of thing you get. They're busy doing other things, and so this doesn't seem to be the priority. And the reality is we're getting to a point where security needs to be a priority.
Right.
And we're getting people coming to our website that are bounty hunters and helping us to understand that they think there's a problem, and there isn't. But that, I mean, what are you going to do as a business when that starts to happen to you? And it's going to happen to all businesses. And so, the days that security could be a third priority are quickly gone.
Right.
And as we get more sophisticated, you really need to be on top of it, or you're going to have to go through the process. And anyone who's gone through the process of notifying in all the states, hitting all the deadlines, all the timelines, getting the fines and penalties, because they're real, and we deal with that. And to have the business impacted in negative ways, having customers do lawsuits, it's just not worth it. So, we can say it, and they, you know what it is. When you go say it, they go, well, you're just pitching me.
Right.
You're selling me.
Yeah, don't sell me. Why are you using fear tactics?
Yeah, it's like, well, because
not trying to.
Because we see it.
Yeah.
And it's real, and I don't want to have the lady crying on the phone with ransomware.
Yeah.
And so, people just need to understand that it's a reality, that it is happening. You can roll the dice if you want, but the reality is antivirus kind of caught up with all of us, and we all ended up buying antivirus.
Right.
And I think that's how security is. It's going to catch up to all of us.
Right.
And so they really need to just understand that instead of waiting until I get hacked, I should make it a first priority now and not have to go through the hassle and the pain and the suffering that you go through, the 5 stages of grief.
Sometimes I talk to, especially the IT teams or security teams, and I'll say, hey, you know that you need this. What is the blocker there for you? And one of the common answers that I get is, you know what, they're just old and they don't get technology. And then I meet the C-level, and they're like in their 50s. I'm like,
They called someone in their 50s old?
dude, 50s is not old just because you're, look.
Yeah.
Hey, so I am Gen Xer, where you adapt to technology like a millennial, but you're mad about it like a boomer, right? So
That describes you.
it totally describes me.
Yeah, it does.
And so it's like, how do we, I think it's not an age thing, but, for people who are non-technical and haven't grown up with the technologies, part of it is, do I know these just because I've lived it? No. But can you learn it even if you are what we call non-technical? And I think that's such a dumb word. Someone who is really, really smart at running a business can be really, really smart at running IT. We're all a white belt at something, and we all take time to learn something, we can learn it. But maybe it's about if you're a C-level and you don't have the time or don't want to commit the time to understanding the technology, maybe there's other ways that you can make good decisions based on leaning on, I don't know, good people that you hire.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can. There's no question that you can. I think for the people that aren't in technology, they don't understand the granularity. So I'll give you an example. We have a security council. We get everyone together, and we meet regularly, and we all talk about new products coming out. We have rules. If it's a backup, you can reinstall it without getting the security council, but anything else has to go through the security council. We have to look at the architecture. We have to see how it's done. I mean, we have everyone in agreement. We are all a bunch of security people. So it's as easy as it gets for anyone to us.
Right.
But it's hard for
It
us.
is. Yeah, it is hard.
And so you get somebody who's non-technical, and what does that mean? It means they just have no understanding. They really shouldn't be making the decisions for their company on security. Because for us who are technical and who are in the space, even knowing everything, having free access to scans, we can scan ourselves as much as we want, right? Every day, and we do.
Yeah.
Still, security is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a process. It has to be a priority, because if it's not a priority, you just won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what that's the part they're missing, is that even if I have everything dialed in the right way and everything's lined up for me to be secure, it's really, really hard. Is it possible that somebody in development pushed a new feature, in all of our code that was new?
Yeah.
Even though it didn't go through the security council. I mean, that's the problem you get to. It gets really tough in the implementation stage to really dive into everything perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they don't understand. So they just look at it and are kind of blowing it off.
We have antivirus. What else do we need?
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually talked to a guy in February before the COVID hit. And there was a meeting with a bunch of us, and it was just potluck, and I was sitting across the table from this guy, and so I asked him what he's doing, and he scaled Everest.
Wow.
And I said, cool, you scaled Everest. So I started asking him all the questions. How much air did he breathe? 1.5 liters up and 0.5 liters down. And, and he said, coming down, you only use 0.5 liters. And he said, most of the people die on their descents because they're using so little oxygen.
Oh, really?
So little air. And he goes, so my friend and I decided we were going to ask ourselves simple math problems.
Oh, okay.
Because we were going to stay sharp, right? So he goes, we're going to do that. And so he did. They said, so we'd ask questions like, what's 70 plus 30? And he goes, I remember distinctly thinking, it doesn't matter. Because my mind, instead of saying, I can't tell you that, it said, it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that's a behavior that we need to understand, because that's really what's happening to these people.
Yeah.
I'm not a security person. It doesn't matter.
Right, because they don't have the context to make those decisions. Therefore, the brain goes,
And if you can think about it that way, that it's a human behavior thing,
Sure.
they're going to naturally say, well, I don't know anything about it. I can't deal with it, so it just doesn't matter. And the reality is it does matter, and it's typically a matter of time before they find that out. And that's the sad part, is that we have to come in and fix that at the end.
And more information is important. I really like working with a lot of the people who have to meet HIPAA compliance, because they don't have a checklist of things they have to do, and therefore they have to say, all right, where are we now, and what can we do to improve our security stance? I find that a very creative and compelling problem to help people with. So last year I had a group that I said, look, guys, you're to the point now where you need a SIM, you need an event management, you need to be able to see what's going on in your systems so that you can recognize potential indicators of compromise and then react to them. And it was not an easy sell, because this was such a new concept to them. And just last week I had a phone call with one of them, and I said, so how's that going? He's like, we are catching things. We're seeing things going on. And I just said, that's amazing, because it's like if you have insight and knowledge into things that are going on, you know how to react to them. Yeah. But if you have no insight into the security and the activity in your systems, then you can't make those good decisions.
Yeah.
So
you don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the most satisfying things about our SOC product is we actually are stopping people from, hackers coming in from other countries trying to get into their financial server. We can see it in real time.
Right.
We can contact them, let them know, and they can shut it down, and there's no incident.
that SOC, some people might not know that we have a managed SOC here, but we had Hef and Forrest on one of the podcasts to talk to us about
okay.
it. But maybe just for the people who didn't see that episode, maybe talk a little bit about the SOC product and what that is about.
So what we have is a product, historically big enterprises could afford a SOC, right? And so they had that benefit, but small businesses could never do that.
Right.
And so one of the things that bugged me as a smaller business, right?
Sure.
And our business was a lot smaller at the beginning, but is that the enterprise people had this luxury, but none of the small businesses did. So what we've done is we've created a product where for a small monthly fee per location, we will monitor all the traffic coming in and out. Now, we're not monitoring the actual data.
Right.
Because there's privacy
Because
problems.
there's privacy and
But
security.
we're understanding all the packet metadata so that we know where it's coming from and going to. And from that analysis, we can start to see as soon as there's a shift, as soon as there's a problem. And then we can also say from our threat feeds, is that a known bad site?
Right.
Oh, that's a known bad site, and all of a sudden traffic went. Okay, alarm, and
Yeah.
we contact.
And I just for the people who are unfamiliar with what SOC means, it's a security operations center. SOC. So yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, so it's good to have those kind of products, right, that actually help people and stop the incidents from occurring. That's what we're all about.
Right. So that kind of brings me to my next question, which is insight into cybersecurity stance. So in addition to a SOC, what other ways can, and specifically, because we want to talk about SecurityMetrics today, what other types of things can people use to improve their cybersecurity stance? If they can't have their own internal staff, what else is up there?
Well, and that's a real problem. And you keep reading articles that are saying that the shortage of cybersecurity people is millions.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like 100,000. It's millions. And so they can't really go hire someone. They can't afford it because those people are really expensive right now. So smaller businesses just can't do that. And so the thing to do is to hire and outsource a lot of that.
Right.
So if I can look at my vulnerabilities on my public-facing servers, if I can do pen tests annually, if I can use a SOC system where I can monitor traffic, the thing that's interesting is that that product has found people that have been hacked for over a year. Their data is being actively stolen on a daily basis.
And they didn't know about
And they had
it.
no idea.
Yeah.
Because most people rely 100% on antivirus. But that's really what we're about, is trying to add layers.
Yes.
If I can add layers, then if one layer fails, the other layer will pick it up. So relying 100% on antivirus, I get the antivirus, you should do that. But then what are your other layers? And that's why having a product like the SOC, this person had an antivirus that was functioning installed, but the people had circumvented it.
Right.
And so they were completely naked, and they got hacked. And it was deep. I mean, we had to go in and help kind of figure that out with them. And so it's really fascinating. If you can think about it like you would a bank and all the layers, we offer cyber products that pretty much coincide with that. And we can help you add layers to your systems so that, and it'll cost you a little bit more, but you get that feeling of security. And then the other thing is training, and we offer training. That's really important. Just like my receptionist story. Right?
Yeah, sure.
I had no idea. And so those are the things that are important. And if they can add those layers, get the training, do all of these things, their security posture is much better, and there's hope.
So do you think training is the way to make data security part of a company culture? Or do you think training is just a part of that?
Well, I think you can do some fun things with it. We've done some really creative things and had really good success. So I know the audit team, your team, and this was years ago. They went and created a site that was one letter off of a site, and they spidered all of the the website of the company we were working for, and then they created a username and password basically into this site. You just had to log into the site, and so they sent this email to all of the public emails they could find on this company, and we had like a 95% click-through.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just incredible because it looked like their site.
Yeah.
And when you glanced up at the top, it looked like their site. So they had it extremely high. And you know, we were told we were cheating, right?
Phishing's not cheating. Phishing is real.
Yeah, but I mean, so what do you do as a culture? Because, you know, you really quickly can get to this point. If you're not misspelling everything, the grammar isn't bad, and the site doesn't look terrible, people will click.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be part of your culture. You can have fun with it. You know, when you go to places like DEF CON, they have the wall of shame, and they have, you know, so I mean, those are the types of things that are fun. And you can do those. We do those here. We'll our IT staff will send off every quarter some fake phishing emails, and it's fun to get them and to recognize them. And then they come back and they give you a report and they tell you if you passed or failed.
Yeah.
I get all excited about them, so I go in and look at them, and so they always mock me, but it is really fun, and I think that's where the culture can get really fun when you get into the training, because training can be fun. It doesn't have to just be sitting there and staring at a screen, listening to acronyms for an hour. Yeah. It really can be something that's practical.
The people that I talk to at different companies that we serve, the ones who really get excited about the training and foiling those phishing campaigns are your frontline, like your receptionist, right? Like people who are not in IT, people who are learning about security maybe a little bit for the first time. They get excited about it because it helps them like feel like they have skills that they can translate not just there at their jobs, but then they're at home and they get a phishing email or a phishing text. My son got a text he was sure was from Amazon telling him to change his password, but it was from my account. I'm like, why would you get that from my account, right? Yeah. And so he's like, well, you got to check it. I'm like, this is a phishing camp. Do not click through. Yeah. So it's one of those things where we are in our day-to-day on a regular basis, we are hit by people who want our information, you know, and I'm starting to see sales campaigns that mimic phishing campaigns. And like the one we all know about, your warranty on your car is, we've been trying to reach you. Yeah. Really? Because I don't have one. Yeah. And you know, and so people who pay bills because they think this invoice is real, right? So the more you kind of start questioning, is this real? Or is this person just trying to get something from me? Yeah. So it helps people. And what I see is the people who get this training at work, turn around, use it at home, and are so excited to tell me about these stories of where they helped their grandma or they themselves foiled something in their lives. And I just love those. Yeah.
No, it is. It is fun to help people and to help them understand that there are people who have nothing better to do than to try to scam you all day. All day. And that's their job. So it's a little disappointing, you know, at some level that people are doing that, but it also is gratifying to be able to help people and make sure they're not caught in a bad way, or they're not big repercussions because of, you know, something that they found on their computer in a phishing email.
All right, great. Well, before we wrap up, what's your favorite part about leading SecurityMetrics?
It's getting to work with all of these great people, like you,
like me,
and Hunter.
Hunter's awesome, isn't he?
Yes, it is.
Hunter is our producer, and we just love him.
Yes. So, no, I think that's the fun part, is that we have a good team, and you know that, and we have people that have been here a long time, which is also great. And in the security industry, where there's millions of jobs, shortage, right? Yeah. It's kind of fun to be at a company that there's a lot of people. We have pretty high retention rate. Yes. And
for good reason. You know, every time I speak, and I speak at a lot of conferences now. I used to get to travel for them. I'm supposed to be in Saigon next week, but it's so sad I'm not. Anyway, but every time I would go to one of these on-site things and speak, I would get 2, 3, 4, 5 job offers at one thing. And my answer is like, no. Because there's a level of trust and autonomy and drive here and enjoyment being part of a security company. So whatever you're doing, keep doing that because it makes me happy. And
Well, and I'm glad that you're here, Jen, because you're fun. And you're Canadian,
Yeah,
which is
and-
also very cool.
right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you
Very
just
international.
outed me about the
Oh, sorry.
Canadian thing.
Oh, sorry.
No, actually, so yeah, you and I shared some childhood areas. Like
Yeah.
our little towns in southern Alberta.
Yeah.
We're very, very close to each other. We have both milked cows and ridden horses and gotten dirty doing dirty farm things.
Yeah, all of those fun things
Yeah.
that we thought were really fun when we were younger.
You know, I remember mucking out a barn once because it was a beautiful day and it needed to be done. I'm like, yeah, I'll do this. And I look back and go, wow,
Yeah.
I need to recapture that.
Yeah.
Because those bunnies really do smell.
No, I know that I actually knew somebody that had bunnies in their living rooms. That's why I asked you, because every time I walk in their house, I'd go, oh my goodness, those bunnies smell.
Bunnies, they're not going to be there forever, but
Yeah.
they have to be there at least until the first week of November, and we have a little time. So Halloween is a big deal for all the people in my house. There's work involved at local, haunted houses and things that the crew goes and works on. But we'll get them outdoors before too long. But for now, we get to enjoy that earthy smell.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you're the one smelling that.
I appreciate you coming and talking to us, and everyone, thank you for enjoying us at this last episode of the season 1 podcast. I've really enjoyed talking to all of the people that have been willing to come and speak with me, and hopefully looking forward to, if I'm lucky, get to do it next year. Talking to more people and getting some great people. If you have ideas on people that you'd like to hear from, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of Security Metrics Podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.